Hey everybody, David Becker here with BeckerArt, and today I want to talk to you about making your watercolors more valuable. And it's going to be not about doing your painting, anything with your painting, but about with how you prepare it to put it into a frame. And so that way is I'm going to try to eliminate glass and a matte board for you so that you don't have to do that and make it more like an oil painter who puts a panel into a plein air frame and gets a lot of money for it. And so we're going to do the same thing with our watercolors, and we'll get the same amount of money as the oil painters will. And so that's something I've just recently done, and it works. It works. It really works. And so what I use is this Dorland wax. It's a cold wax that you apply to your watercolor. Now the only problem is that when you're doing your watercolor, you just can't use a sheet of paper. You've got to mount your watercolor paper to a panel. To do that first, I will have in the description of the video, I will have a link to where I show you how to put your paper and glue it to a board. But you have to have it on a board, and then when you go to paint it, then afterwards you can just put it into a plein air frame with a point driver and you're done. No more glass, no more matte board. And so how do you do that? You take this Dorland wax, it's a cold wax, and you basically apply it to your painting. How do you do that? You just open the container. You can either do it with your fingers, you can just go in there. I usually like to use rubber gloves before I do this, though I've done it before without gloves, and it's fine. You just take it and rub it right onto your painting. See, I'm just putting it down and just rub it right into your painting. And it's not going to affect the watercolor. People think that this is wet and it will affect it. It will not. I've tried it on so many different watercolors, and it works great. It never has done anything to my watercolor at all. Now, don't use this with colored pencil, where the colored pencil is not water soluble, because I did it once, and the colored pencil didn't. It smudged all over. So don't use it for colored pencil, but for watercolor, it is absolutely fine. So I'm just putting it. See, I'm rubbing in, going into the container, rubbing it in, and just rub it down on the paper. That's one way. Now the other way is to use like a brush. This is a bristle brush. You just dip it into there, get some of the wax, and then just rub it on to the painting. Now I don't like this as much as using my fingers because I can feel where it's wet when I'm doing this, but with my brush I have to look, and so I like to feel it more than like looking to see if I've got every part of the painting. So that's another way, though. You can just do that. The way I use mostly is using a rag. Just use an old rag, a dishcloth, anything that's like an old rag. I don't like usually using red, a brand new red one, but that's the only thing I had in my studio at the moment, because I'm not sure if this red will come off on the paper, but usually it doesn't. But I'm just going to take it, I put it onto my rag, and I just rub it into the painting, right? You just rub it in there, just go across it, and you just keep on going. It will not affect the painting at all. If you only put one coat on, that's enough, really. And just you have to let it cure, which it takes about a month to cure, where it gets hard as a rock, and it'd be like varnish. And if you want it to be shiny, you maybe put a couple coats on it and buff it. Buff it with a buffer. Like take your buffer and just buff it, make it shiny. But you don't have to, and just by putting one coat on here protects it enough as a watercolor, and you can then just putting it all across here, and then you can just put, you can have water get it onto it, and it's no problem. Now what I used here was a hardboard that I got at Menards, cut to the size, and on this one I used a gesso ground to make my ground. But a lot of times if you want to use a piece of paper, you do have to glue that piece of paper to the board. So again, like I said, I'll put a description of how to glue a paper to your board, any kind of board, and so that you can mount it into a frame. So by not having the glass and by not having the matte, it just makes it more valuable because you're using a plein air frame and it's looking more like an oil. And I've proven that last week, I was at the Plein Air Painters Expo, and my painting hung right next to all the oil paintings. I just got about the same price as they did with a watercolor. So you just makes your watercolor look more valuable, and I guarantee you it works. I've done it 3 times now, and it works perfectly. And it makes your painting easier to put together when you're at a plein air event. So let's say this week I'm going to the Cedarburg Plein Air Fest, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it. Already prepared my panels of paper, and then I'll just wax it right after I get done. And then use my point driver, put it right into the frame, put some wire on it, and get it ready to sell. So do that. Use some Dorland wax, and you'll be on your way to getting more money for your paintings. All right. So if any other questions, put them into my comments section below, and I will try to answer them. But go ahead and wax your watercolors. It's a great thing. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.